Welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. All right, let's face it, there are a lot of weed issues in soybean fields across the country, and fortunately, Liberty is still working on pretty much all of them. So we're going to talk a little bit about Liberty Link soybeans and if that may be the right decision for you.
All fall, we've been talking about soil testing and how to read a soil test. Well, one of the most important things you've got to look at is your phosphorus levels. There are a couple different phosphorus tests you might see on the soil test. We'll talk about what those mean and how to read them today.
Well, we have a very difficult to control and important weed of the week. If you've got this one around your farm, you need to get rid of it. We'll talk about control methods for our weed of the week. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty Herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty Herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we want to talk about herbicide modes of action, or as many people are now calling it, herbicide sites of action. What's the difference?
Well, when we see resistant weeds, a lot of times we'll say, well, that's resistant to Roundup, or that's resistant to ALS herbicides, or that's resistant to this, or resistant to that. And when we think about it, we don't want to group everything together. That's like saying, well, humans are resistant to chickenpox. No, some are, and some aren't. And so how do we break that down? So when we look at modes of action, okay, yes, there may be quite a few different herbicides with that same mode of action, same way that they kill weeds, but exactly at what site do they do those things within the plant? So you may have two different herbicides with the same mode of action. Hey, we're both growth regulators, but they may affect that plant at different sites. One may affect that plant right at the nodes, one might affect the plant further down or further out or wherever. So if you get different sites of action, that's really what we're looking at when we're trying to find which herbicide solutions are going to control some of these resistant weeds.
Just in the past few months at Ag PhD, we've released a free app for you. So if you're a farmer, you can look this up, or a non-farmer too, and you're just curious about how many different choices there are, you can search for Ag PhD MOA, the MOA standing for mode of action. So we call it modes of action there, but if you go into each product, it will basically tell you how it's killing it, at what site it's killing it, so you can get a little bit more information.
So for farmers, when they're looking at this, they're obviously trying to mix things up out on their farm a little bit. If they've got, say, common ragweed, and we know common ragweed is going to be resistant to a few different types of chemistries that are out there. So what farmers will do on their farms is say, you know what? Yes, I want to use Roundup as a control method for certain weeds on the farm, but I'm also going to add a different site of action out there to help me on the ragweed. Then I raised corn this year. Next year I'm going to raise soybeans. Well, in soybeans, I want to use a different site of action that I didn't use in my corn. So now if common ragweed was resistant to anything I did in corn, now I get another shot at it in soybeans. And then let's say I rotate the next year to wheat. Now I've got different sites of action available to me. Or even before I plant, I may have another site of action that I can use. So we hear all this talk in the media about these super weeds and resistant weeds, and it's scary to think, oh no, here's some weeds out there that are going to destroy crop production and there's nothing we can do. That couldn't be further from the truth. Yes, there may be one product that doesn't work so well on a certain weed, and maybe it's the most famous herbicide in the world, Roundup, that almost everybody knows what Roundup is, that, hey, that's a weed killer of some sort. Well, who cares if Roundup doesn't work? There's hundreds of other products out there that could actually do the job, and so it's up to farmers like us to figure out, well, what products are still working? Okay, let's use that and we can get it under control.
Yeah, because quite frankly, every weed is a super weed. Every weed can hurt yield, and that's a big deal. It hurts crop production, which is basically food production. It definitely can lower income on farms, so every weed's a super weed. It's not that big a deal. But anyway, with this mode of action thing, site of action thing, here's really, to keep it real simple, what you need to know. A lot of the crop protection manufacturers now are putting right on their herbicide label, hey, we're in group 2. Our product's in group 2, or our product's in group 15. What that means is the group 2s would be like the ALS products. So you know if it's a group 2, oh, it's all that same chemistry, it's all that same basic general family. So if you're having problems with the ALS family or group 2s, you just avoid that one. It's not that tough to figure out. So we talk about the group 15s a lot. Those would be the pre-emerge corn herbicides that now also Many of them can be used early post-emerge in soybeans. Things like Harness, Surpass, Outlook, Dual, Warrant, Zidua, they all fall into that category. So the big thing is what farmers are really trying to do is use multiple modes of action or multiple groups every year on every different crop, and by doing that it dramatically reduces the chance for weed resistance, and it dramatically increases the chance that we as farmers are going to have better weed control.
See, and it's knowledge like this that's going to help us control things like our weed of the week. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed and which site of action might work the best coming up later in the show.
Regalia RX biofungicide activates a plant's natural defense system, limiting the effects of disease and improving overall plant health. Regalia RX complements your fungicide program to optimize yield and strengthen return on investment. Ask your retailer for Regalia RX today.
I choose Stein.
I choose service.
I choose results.
I choose research.
I choose genetics.
I choose Stein.
At Stein, we have products that are second to none.
You know, Stein has a background of the highest yielding genetics in the marketplace.
They are a world-class leader in genetics. We push the limits, we try new things, we develop genetics, all designed to benefit the farmer.
I choose Stein because Stein has yield.
I trust Agro Liquid because I've seen the results and they're positive and they work on my farm, they work in my environment. When I started farming, we was farming around 125 acres, and now we're up to around 1,700 acres. I think I was recognized as the Tennessee Young Farmer by being a leader in the community and also being innovative. I'm always looking for new products, but I got to make sure that those products are sustainable. I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I would love for them to farm this land.
For lower costs, higher production, Mandico Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Avoid costly downtime with Twister's ease of maintenance. Its unique Coulter suspension allows it to follow the contour of the field yet remain forgiving in rocks. Our hydraulically adjustable Coulter angles mean you never leave the cab, making residue management easier, more efficient. Spring or fall, the Mandico Twister is the new leader. Check with your local dealer or visit mandicoagri.com.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
Your time is valuable. That's why you need a Hagie STS application system. Hagie STS products are designed for precision and efficiency, allowing you to make applications all season long with just one machine. Contact your Hagie rep today.
While farmers are trying to figure out how to control Roundup-resistant weeds, a lot of them are turning to Liberty Link soybeans, but probably the biggest question that Darren and I get is, do those Liberty Link beans actually yield?
Well, do they yield, and will Liberty be able to kill my weeds? That's two of the biggest concerns that I've got. Because, you know, we talked about corn traits earlier this fall, and it's the same thing in soybean traits. If you're going to switch from, say, Roundup Ready to Yield soybeans over to Liberty Link soybeans, or you're going to go from conventional beans to Liberty beans, or any combination of those things. Hey, I'm going to have some different genetics in there. So it's not only I've got a different trait so I can put different herbicides on my field safely, it's I've got a different germplasm in there too. So when you're looking at Liberty Link soybeans, that is a natural question. How are they going to yield compared to Roundup Ready to Yield soybeans? I think there are good products in both trait packages. I think there are good products in conventional trait packages too. And I would also say this, there are some products that aren't the best for you in any of those trait packages. So you really need to do your homework and say, okay, are there bad conventional varieties for me and my ground? Yes. Are there bad Roundup varieties, bad Liberty varieties? Sure. So there are good ones for your farm, for your ground, and for your rotation, so I would not be scared about that at all.
All right, but here's the whole problem. If you're thinking that Liberty is the same product as Roundup, it's not at all. Liberty is a lot different than Roundup. Number one, it's a contact killer. Roundup is very systemic in the plant, Liberty's not. So you have to have better coverage. You're probably going to need more water, more spray pressure. You definitely want to use flat fan nozzles. Don't be using those drift reduction nozzles like you use for Roundup, or you're not going to be happy. So you got to do all these things, plus you want to throw some ammonium sulfate glyphosate in there to make sure you get a little bit better performance. And then the other big thing is, you know, when Roundup first came out on Roundup Ready soybeans, people were killing 2-3 foot tall weeds with no problem. You're not going to do that with Liberty. You got to use a good strong rate, 29 or 36 ounces, something like that. But either way, even if you're using 36 ounces, it's still not good enough to take down 3 foot tall weeds consistently. So use a pre-emerge herbicide and start spraying when those weeds are small.
Okay, so getting that herbicide to work well is very important, and for me, it all starts with that great pre-emerge herbicide program. With Liberty Link soybeans, they do have rebates on some of those key pre-herbicides like the Authority brand products. I would strongly recommend that. If I'm planting Liberty Link soybeans, I would certainly include that in the program. And like we always talk about in Ag PhD, we love 3 different sites of action pre-emerge for the best weed control in soybeans. So I would strongly recommend that. Maybe you use something like Authority MTZ. So you have the Authority and the metribuzin. And then I would add something like Prowl or Treflan, depending on your tillage system. Now you've got 3 different sites of action, and it still costs less than some of the expensive post-emerge treatments that you're going to have to use to clean up any escape weeds if you didn't have that Liberty as an option. Now, speaking of Liberty, once you use that first shot of Liberty, in many cases here this year, that second pass is going to be covered. So that's part of their performance program. Hey, you put a good pre down, you use Liberty. If you need another shot of Liberty, hey, you can have the herbicide, just get out there and get it done. So that's going to be a good thing. It's going to make it much more economical for you than it may have been in the past.
The economics, hey, that's really the whole key. People are asking, what's the cost of the Liberty system versus the cost of the Roundup system? What you're going to find, the soybean price is fairly similar, but with that herbicide, yes, even though Liberty herbicide came down a lot in price this year, it's still going to be considerably more expensive than Roundup. But I guess I would just ask you, well, are you getting control with your Roundup or are you not? Well, most people aren't with just straight Roundup. So not only are they using more than just one pre, they're using tank mix partners post. So if you can avoid the tank mix partners and you maybe use one less pre in your Liberty program versus your Roundup program, well, hey, that offsets that cost difference. And the other big thing is, let's face it, if you have weeds out there, you have dramatically less yield. I've talked to a lot of guys that have run through water hemp or Palmer pigweed areas in fields. It's 20 bushels less. Well, what's 20 bushels cost you? Okay, so here's the thing. We just want you to have great weed control and maximize your profit on your farm. So yes, the Liberty system could very well cost a few dollars more, but grand total, it's not going to be a whole lot different than the Roundup system in terms of cost.
Okay, I want to wrap this thing up here, and when I look at Liberty Link beans, believe me, we can make a good system for weed control for Roundup Ready beans in almost every situation. So don't think, well, I have to go away from Roundup. No, I think we can tweak your program and get pretty good control on almost everything. But let's just say that you choose to go with the Liberty Link system. A couple other things that we haven't talked about. One, you don't have to burn the beans with Liberty. If you did have to spray, say, a Cobra at full rate, you certainly have to burn the beans. Not that that's necessarily bad, but a lot of guys don't like to see their beans burned. So if you have Liberty as an option, Liberty Link soybeans, you don't have to burn the beans. The other thing is when you don't burn the beans, we see beans getting to a canopy quicker. The chances of having to respray again are less in that Liberty Link system because you didn't do anything to slow that crop from growing, and that full canopy is your best weed control you're going to get.
Well, just make sure you pick a great yielding variety regardless of what the trait package is. And if you are going to spray Liberty, make sure you're switching to flat fan nozzles and using maybe a little more water and a little better spray pressure to get great spray coverage and make your Liberty work the best possible.
Well, Liberty's good on quite a few weeds. Unfortunately, it's not the best choice for our weed of the week. We'll share what is coming up later in the show.
Take a look inside any rotary combine and you'll find single rotor technology. Technology Case IH introduced over 35 years ago with the axial flow combine. But unless it gives you more bells and whistles with fewer belts and chains, more power using less fuel, it's not an axial flow. Because while the heart of every rotary combine beats red, only Case IH gives you the power to do more.
Dirty work pays. That is if your dirty work includes a SoilMax Gold Digger tile plow. SoilMax tile plows feature zero deflection technology. With the only tile plow factory paired with Ag Leader's IntelliSlope control system, you eliminate the need for grade calculations and lasers. So make your next investment in a SoilMax Gold Digger. Better yield, longer planting and harvest windows, better water management is all yours with SoilMax. Visit soilmax.com.
How will you secure your farm for the future? The Quasar Chopping Cornhead from Capello USA will help. Our design is focused on efficiency, longevity, and reducing harvest loss, making the Quasar the corn harvest solution to bring your farm forward. With hundreds of units ready for immediate delivery, secure your farm's future today. Do it for your farm, do it for them. Order now. Capello USA. Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
There are no marks of conflict lining this landscape. No echoes of economic hardship. Just the unmistakable murmur of Mother Nature's hand. In the perennial quest to outperform, ensure your crop gets the nutrients it craves with a Veil Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Nothing helps protect your investment more, so you can grow confidently no matter what comes your way. Avail. Hold your ground.
Our CT applicators are changing the way you apply products to seed.
The one thing we really like about the applicator is how accurate it gets the fluency agent dispensed on the seed.
The CT applicator brush sifts powder into small particles, resulting in even and accurate distribution.
I would strongly encourage looking at one of these applicators. The biggest selling point is the pinpoint accuracy, and we're not leaving dollars on the table.
The CT applicator can be used with any seed delivery system at the time of planting. Remember, CT applicators for the changing times.
If you're trying to read your soil tests, one of the most important things you've got to look at is phosphorus. Now, there are two main tests that we talk about on the soil test that you may need. We look at the Olsen test if your soil pH is above 7, and we look at the Bray tests, the P1 and P2, or strong Bray and weak Bray, if your soil pH is 7 or less.
This is so critical for you, and it's really not that complicated, and there are just a few basics that you need to know. When it comes to phosphorus, yes, soil pH is going to be the determining factor whether you use one test or the other, and then it's just pretty simple from there. Let's convert what's on that test to how many pounds I have in my field, and then figure out how many pounds I need to apply.
Okay, the Olsen test tells you available phosphorus. In a higher soil pH, we believe that's the most accurate test. Same thing with the P1 or weak Bray test in lower soil pHs. So if it's less than 7, that's where we want the Bray test. And that P1 test, that's important. That basically is going to be the same type of thing as the Olsen test. It's what's available right now for phosphorus in my field. The other test is the strong Bray or P2 test. In the lower pH soils, that'll tell you how much phosphorus is there in total in the soil. Not just what's available, but also what's in reserve. So you have a pretty good idea of grand total amount of phosphorus.
The Ag PhD Fertilizer Removal app is a free app you can download for your tablet or your smartphone, so you can look up your crop and what your yield goal is, and then figure out exactly how many pounds of phosphorus you're going to need throughout the season. Now, you may ask the question of, when should I put this phosphorus on? And certainly phosphorus is one of those nutrients, or it's probably the #1 nutrient that moves the least in the soil. So could you put all your phosphorus out in one shot? Potentially the answer is yes. And then where should you put that phosphorus? You want to get it down in the soil if at all possible, since it doesn't move very well through the soil profile.
All right, it's important to have lots of phosphorus in your soil if you're going to raise a really high yielding crop. But you also have to be a little careful, because if your phosphorus levels are terribly high, then you can limit other things like zinc, for example. But I also see a lot of people showing, oh, I have 20 parts per million available. I'm doing pretty good. Really? Well, think about it. Okay, if we're going to convert straight phosphorus to phosphate, you multiply times 2.3. So if you had 20, you multiply that times 2.3, you're at 46 parts per million. Now you're going to double that to determine pounds per acre, so that's 92 pounds per acre. Okay, that might cover it if you're raising a really good crop, but here's the thing. Are you going to extract every last ounce of phosphorus that's already in your soil? Probably not. That's really why we talk so much about placement with the non-mobile nutrients like phosphorus. Ideally, we want to have it right where that crop root is, or close to where that crop root is, so it can extract it, because roots don't just magically know where the nutrients are in your soil. What they do is they start going out based on the path of least resistance. If they find a fertile area, then they put a whole bunch more roots there. So placement is incredibly important for nutrients like phosphorus. All right, let's say that you're dramatically low on phosphorus. You know, throwing some MAP or DAP out there is probably the cheapest way to get a per pound of nutrient analysis out there. If you're just talking about feeding the crop, we have a lot of people that are doing liquids and banding. That's a pretty good way to go, as long as you don't get too carried away in furrow. Just understand, we want the in furrow because a lot of times phosphorus in your soil soil isn't very available when your soil is cold early in the spring when we like to plant. So it's nice to have a little good start, nice available liquid fertilizer. That's great, but that's only one component of the whole program.
Well, having a plan of attack for phosphorus is important. It's also key for controlling our weed of the week. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Our weed of the week is curly dock. It's a tough perennial weed, but we'll help you on stopping it on your farm.
Well, it's a primary noxious weed, so by law, you have to control this weed if you've got it. But many people don't. We see it out in fields, in pastures, in grasslands.
And heavy ground.
Yeah.
It's not real good in acid soils, but in heavy, low, wet ground, that's commonly where we see it.
Even in lawns, I've seen curly dock, and people are like, hey, what's this weed? I try to pull it, and it just kind of turns to mush, and I have a tough time, and it regrows. It's curly dock.
Yeah.
You got to get that stuff under control.
Yeah, but hey, let's face it, the reason why we see curly dock a lot of times is because this is where your crop doesn't grow well, or maybe you cut your lawn too short, or your lawn is thin there. So if you just do everything possible to raise a great crop, a lot of times the curly dock goes away. So in low grounds, add some tile drainage, do a better job with fertility, manage that better, and curly dock will be less of a problem.
Well, of course, if you have conventional tillage out in your fields, normally in the spring, if you're doing any kind of tillage, you wipe out curly dock pretty well, and then you don't have a big problem in crop. We see it more in field situations in reduced till. And once you're in a reduced till situation, and yes, you've got a drainage issue perhaps that's allowing the curly dock to compete heavily against your crop, you've got to use a really strong herbicide. In a burn down situation, I really like Roundup at high rates, especially if you can add some Sharpen with it. It seems like we get even more activity on curly dock.
Well, we want to get that burn down right away early in the spring, because usually when we're talking perennial weeds like curly dock, they're already up and going. So adding some metribuzin in on soybeans with something like Valor or Authority, and if you have to, if Roundup isn't working in your area for some reason, you could always switch to Gramoxone 2. In wheat, we like Sharpen. In corn, using a Verdict, which contains Sharpen, that's really good. Otherwise, there are some other products you could try as well.
Post-emerge in soybeans, obviously you've got options like Roundup, and Liberty is not the best on curly dock, but those are options that could do a decent job for you. Otherwise, I like the old Synchrony. That STS type chemistry seems to do a little bit on curly dock. Also, ALS products like Pursuit or Raptor have some activity. In wheat, I like Addition Broad Spec. Here again, ALS, and it seems to do okay on curly dock. In corn, Status is probably my favorite, especially if you throw a little atrazine in with it.
Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week, the perennial curly dock. Stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
This year's projected U.S. soybean yield will lose over $500 million per point in shrink. Eliminate shrink in your bin. Store grain without lowering moisture content with the AgriDry Bullseye Temperature and Moisture Controller. The Bullseye monitors air temperature and relative humidity, allowing your fans to utilize the weather's natural condition to maintain your grain at market moisture. Fan run times drastically decrease along with the cost of over-drying. Eliminate shrink today. Call now.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots from Monsanto Bioag is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more, and is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Get Quick Roots today.
We have a school and a church nearby. I actually go to the classroom to educate the students about what's going on here on my farm. The system that I have, I tie everything together. No-till, cover crops, We applied AgriLiquid in furrow with our soybeans this year. It seemed like they jumped out of the soil even though we had the record rainfall. I really feel that I'm feeding my plant on a consistent year-round basis throughout the growing season.
Presenting the new 2016 Apache sprayer. If you could save money and increase yield, why wait? Delaying change can cost you money.
It's phenomenal the return of investment it brings back. In my mind, a sprayer is the biggest return of investment you can bring back.
Apache owners apply in half the time for full type, apply when they want versus custom, and spend less than Hydrostat owners, not to mention less weight on their crops. Go ahead and compare. We hope you do. Visit etsprayers.com to locate a dealer and how to save with an Apache. Apache, now more than ever.
Are you wasting money applying the wrong fertilizers on your farm? Here are 3 easy steps to finding out. First, download the free Ag PhD soil test app. Next, pull your own samples. You can probably sample 1,000 acres a day using 5-acre grids. Finally, submit the samples and get both Ag PhD and Midwest Labs recommendations. You can also quickly and easily build your own variable rate application maps and controller files. Go to agphdsoiltest.com to learn more.
With the success of the Case IH Tiger Quad Track and Magnum Road Track tractors, it's no secret why Case IH is the leader of the track. So it wasn't surprising when the competition started imitating us. But only Case IH offers a 5-axle design to give you a smoother ride, more power to the ground, with less berming and compaction. Still, we're flattered. In fact, if we weren't already red, we'd be blushing.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
Looking to boost your soybean yields next year? Improving your fertility program is often the #1 key to bigger soybean yields. But where should you place that plant food? I'll share some ideas during today's Iron Talk. With corn, one of the quickest and easiest ways to boost a fertility program is by putting some fertilizer in the furrow at planting time. With soybeans, you just can't do a whole lot of that. Sure, you can put a gallon or 2 in furrow depending on soil types and other factors. However, to fertilize soybeans, you need to plan ahead exactly where you're going to place those nutrients. Here are 3 times that you have to have equipment set up to handle soybean fertility. First, planting time. Yes, I just said you can't put much in furrow, but don't forget about using a 2x2 type placement. This is going to be very important for corn as well as soybeans over the next few years. You can safely put a lot more fertilizer just off to the side if you're set up to do it in a 2x2. Second, foliar application. If you have a sprayer, you can put certain liquid fertilizers right with your fungicide, insecticide, or herbicide application. Check with your agronomist in advance, though, to see what growth stage would be the best time to do the foliar and which other treatments you can and cannot mix with it. Also, since you won't be applying huge amounts of fertilizer this way, think of foliar feeding as a way to stimulate the roots to pick up more of your soil fertility. Third, deep banding. We really have seen good results deep banding fertilizer on our farm in the fall ahead of soybeans. You could potentially do this in the spring as well, but soil conditions often favor the fall applications. You can boost your soybean yields this year, but getting set up to apply the plant food required to reach high yield goals needs to happen right now. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but if you're looking for more agronomy information, please tune in to the Ag PhD radio show. You'll find us on Sirius XM channel 147, that's the rural radio channel, at 2 p.m. and 11 p.m. Central each weekday.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show, where we'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
While the population of our planet grows each year, the amount of farmland we have to grow food for everyone becomes less. According to the USDA, farmers will need to produce as much food in the next 40 years as they have in the last 500. To learn how they are doing it sustainably, visit rnmf.org.